The reading assignment that goes with this video is Chapter 12 in Rhetorical Grammar, 6th edition, pages 240 to 256. This is a lot of reading. There's a lot we're going to cover in this video as well. We're talking about structure classes. These are things that provide connections between the form classes. The form classes are all about content, nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs. We have 7 different classes of structure words. You use these when you're speaking, when you're thinking, when you're writing every day. As with a lot of stuff we're talking about, you might not have known the fancy grammatical term. Here are the 7 structure classes. We're going to go through all 7, starting with determiners. You've already learned a little bit about determiners in your study of nouns. Nouns, by definition, are preceded by determiners. These include articles and several different kinds of pronouns. Demonstrative pronouns, this, those, that. Possessive pronouns, her, his, and then indefinite pronouns, which are always fun for agreement issues, all, each, everyone. Would you agree that determiners are kind of important when we're putting together thoughts in English? It's much easier, after all, to say, that's my book, rather than, that is the book that belongs to me. Auxiliaries have to do with verbs. So determiners we're usually associating with the form class of nouns. The structure class auxiliaries have to do with the form class verbs. 3 verbs that you need to know about. Auxiliaries. Well, you probably know these as helping verbs. Am, is, was, were, has, have, had, do, does, did. You might have even attended a high school where these words were forbidden in some of your writing. I know I did, because using these helping verbs was considered lazy. Surely there was a stronger, more powerful action verb that you could use. But sometimes you really just want to say, I am studying. She did need help. It's really great for emphasis. This class is about rhetorical grammar, using all your grammatical tools to make the desired effect on your audience. Sometimes you need a helping. We're still on auxiliaries. Modal auxiliaries have to do with the mode or the mood of your main verb. It's different to say, I am studying, versus I could study, then again, I might not. Modal auxiliaries color your main verb. They might add doubt, they might add emphasis, but they do help you get across a message. Look at all the variations that I suddenly have when I add a modal auxiliary. He will play, she could play, and all of them mean slightly different things about whether or not this boy and girl are actually going to play. We also have semi-auxiliaries that involve the preposition to, have to, and going to. These are a lot like the verb do in that they add emphasis. She is going to cry. That's how most of us would say it. We'd put the emphasis on this verb. Structure class number 3, qualifiers. We use qualifiers quite a lot too. Structure class 3 is qualifiers. These modify adjectives or adverbs. So if you've noticed, we've gone from determiners, class 1, generally deal with nouns. Class 2, auxiliaries, generally deal with verbs. Now we're to our other 2 form classes with qualifiers. And these are sort of modal or mood shading words as well. Quite, to, very, somewhat. The thing about these qualifiers is often they do seem lazy or like a cop-out that you couldn't find, as exercise 40 on page 242 suggests, more precise wording. So take a look at these 2 sentences. We have qualified adjectives and adverbs in italics, 1, 2, 3. And think about what could you replace these phrases with, a single word that would have the same impact or possibly even a more powerful impact. Go ahead and hit pause while you think about this. Thinking is good. Practicing is good. Here are some possibilities. I can say Ben was so very careful. These words carry very different connotations. This isn't the literal dictionary definition, that's a denotation. This is the feeling or the mood associated with the word. The guest speaker's really strong denunciation, the guest speaker's cutting denunciation. Well, that's not just really strong, that's kind of brutal and vicious. And it's actually very nice to say that, this horrible, horrible denunciation seemed quite out of place. I'm being very polite and proper. Well, there are plenty of other single words that are polite and proper. Seemed misplaced, seemed unsuited, seemed awkward at an awards banquet. You probably came up with other ideas. So what do you think about this as an activity? Would this be valuable? At what grade level? Something we're going to talk about when we see each other in class again. Structure class 4 includes prepositions. If you look on page 243 of your book, you'll see a huge list. I'd like to focus on some less well-known ones, phrasal prepositions. And as you can see, they're called this because they have more than one word. They are a phrase, because of, according to, next to, in spite of. Think about what would follow these phrasal prepositions. Wouldn't you put a noun after most of these? Possibly a determiner, a noun phrase. Because of the horrible weather. In spite of my crippling shyness. Function as. These function as prepositions. Notice they end in prepositions of, to, of. Nice hint. 5 is a particular class of preposition called a particle. Particles can be combined with verbs to produce what we call phrasal verbs. So if phrasal prepositions have more than one word, what would you expect a phrasal verb to look like? Here's some examples. You can't take off. You can't give up. Some of these phrasal verbs are movable. Please put down the baby. I could also say, please put the baby down. Depends where I want to put the emphasis. Notice how I, at least, read them differently. Please put down the baby. Please put the baby down. I stress where I want the baby. Now, phrasal verbs you can often replace with a single action verb. You can't leave right before class. You can't disappear right before class. But there's nothing wrong with these phrasal verbs. They simply have a different name. They are a verb plus a particle, which is a special preposition. Structure class 6 of 7, conjunctions. Everybody knows conjunction junction. What is the function? Joining, connecting, hooking up nouns, verbs, clauses, sentences. There are 2 classes of conjunctions. We've got our coordinating conjunctions. These are our FANBOYS word. For, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. Coordinating conjunctions give equal weight to both clauses, both parts of my sentence. So you tend to need 2 complete sentences on either side. We also have subordinating conjunctions, which makes one clause subordinate, lesser, dependent on the other. These are words like when, because, although. Our 7th and final structure class, pronouns. Now, we've seen pronouns already. Back when we talked about structure class 1, determiners, there were a whole bunch of pronouns in there. Words in the English language can pull double duty, triple duty, septuple duty. But the thing to remember is pronouns, whether they're just functioning as pronouns, whether they're functioning as determiners, these are structure class words. They provide connections. And as your book explains on page 245, to understand pronouns and to help others learn the vast variety that we have in English, thanks in large part to its derivation from Old German, you need to know about number, person, and case. Numbers pretty basic. There's singular, and then there's plural. There's me, then there's we. There's you, and there's them. One person, more than one person. Person refers to first, second, and third. First person is I, me, my, we, us. Second person, you, your. And then third person is he, she, it, they, all of those. Case is the function in the sentence. And you might be looking at these going, oh my gosh, pronouns have 3 cases. You already know this instinctively and naturally growing up speaking English. If you look at the top of page 246 in your book, you'll see a nice little chart that shows you the subjective, objective, and possessive cases of the different singular and plural, first, second, and third person pronouns. Subjective simply means it can work as a subject in a sentence. I. Objective means it's an object. Me. Possessive means belonging to somebody. Mine. When students come from a language that doesn't have such a variety of pronouns, if it has pronouns at all, this can be a lot to grasp. When do I say it and when do I say its? Because with a lot of our pronouns, the subjective and the objective are the same. You went to bed. I found your pajamas for you. You is subjective and objective. So is it. But it's not the same for his and her. It's confusing. Do you think a table like this would help? How would you help this sort of student? Have a dialogue? Have the student read something out loud that uses all the different pronouns in all their different cases? Because the confusion with pronouns doesn't end here. In English, we don't have a gender-neutral pronoun. We generally don't refer to people as it. So when you say the student must bring his paper, well, we're not supposed to do that because that's sexist. It assumes that all students are male. Okay, let's just say the student must bring their paper. That doesn't call out boys, girls, whatever. Now I've got an agreement issue. The student is one person. Their is plural. This is a super picky, old school grammatical rule. There is growing support for using their as a gender-neutral pronoun. But what you are most likely to run up against in your workplace with older teachers, with supervisors who went through school 20, even 10 years ago, is that people will say, the student must bring their paper. Who taught you grammar? Don't you know anything? We see this error all over billboards. It's all over advertisements. You hear it on TV. We say it when we speak. But technically, it is still considered a grammatical error. Here are some solutions. You can use the awkward his or her. The student must bring his or her paper. Sometimes you can mix it up. You can say a student must bring his paper. The student must also be sure to bring her pen. You can go back and forth. That can get confusing to keep track of. Another solution, if you want to use the plural their, which is nice and gender neutral, change your initial noun to a plural as well. The student, forget it. Students must bring their papers. Or you could get rid of the pronoun altogether. The student must bring the paper. Students must bring the papers. I do highly recommend these workarounds whenever you're writing a cover letter, a resume, anything very formal for employment. It's better to err on the side of what we might call grammatical conservatism. Be conservative. It's even worse with indefinite pronouns like everyone, everybody. These are singular. We say everybody is here. You wouldn't say, hey, everybody are here. No. Everyone has their story doesn't sound as wrong, does it? Technically, it's incorrect. Everybody is here, singular, singular. Everyone has, singular, I need a singular pronoun. Everyone has his or her story. It just doesn't flow as well. This is a case where I definitely would recommend just drop the pronoun. Everyone has a story. That way you're not offending anyone, you're not committing any grammatical infractions, and you're still getting your point across, simply and eloquently. Pronoun case errors tend to happen most with the objective case and also with reflexive pronouns. So let's take a look at some examples. She left with Jim and I. Is this correct? How many of you grew up with people saying, it's you and I, not you and me. You must speak proper English. Well, yes, you and I is correct when we're talking about the subjective pronoun case, when these words are the subject of the sentence. The subject of my sentence is she. She left with Jim and me. This should be the objective case. You wouldn't say she left with I. She left with me. Therefore, she left with Jim and me. It's something your book calls hypercorrection. We're so worried about speaking grammatically correct that we mess up the pronoun case. This is between her and me. Should this be this is between she and I, between her and I, between she and me? What do you think? As is the case with sentence 1, our subject is this pronoun, this, is between objective case. The object case for a female is her. The objective case, first person, singular, is me. This is between her and me, grammatically correct. Now, I bet some of you are going, oh wow, that just doesn't sound right. It is correct because we have these 3 different cases of pronouns. All right, what about this one? Where's your pronoun? Is it functioning as a subject in the sentence, or is it an object? Is it receiving an action? My pronoun is I. It is the object of the verb told. He told me to go away. He told Britt and me to go away. Sometimes it helps to take out the first part, because then it sounds a lot better. He told I to go away. Most of us wouldn't even hypercorrect to that degree. He told me to go away. Even when I add another person in there, he's still telling me to get lost. Your book talks more about hypercorrection on page 250 if you want to see some further examples. Many of us also have an issue with hypercorrection and reflexive pronouns. We use the reflexive pronoun, which is where you add self, myself, himself, yourself, to these personal pronouns. The rule stated on the bottom of page 251 in your textbook says, we use the reflexive as an object in a clause when its antecedent is the subject. Basically, if this person, I, John, them, if they are the subject of the sentence, then I can use the reflexive pronoun. But what we tend to do is use reflexive pronouns in the wrong situations. Here's some examples. Correct or not? Well, our rule is only use a self word, a reflexive pronoun, if this person is also the subject of the sentence. I brought food for Shay and myself. This is correct because I in the subject of the sentence, therefore I would use the reflexive pronoun at the end. He made dinner for Mac and myself. He is now the subject of my sentence. I can't use myself at the end. I would say he made dinner for Mac and me. Not Mac and I, because it's the objective case. He made dinner for me. What about this one? Well, as long as John is serving lunch to himself and not some other dude, this is good. John served himself. Reflexive pronoun has to reflect back on something earlier, a subject in the sentence. Hang on, we're almost done. I know you probably have a headache. Indefinite pronouns. Here's some examples. The great thing about indefinite pronouns is that many of them can be expanded. Something, somebody, and they can also take modifiers. You can say big enough, many more, some of the time, more of the same. We also tend to use indefinite pronouns as determiners if we look back at structure class 1. And you might think, okay, why are we talking about this? The thing is, they're incredibly... So why do indefinite pronouns matter? Because they are so flexible. Because they can be modified in so many different ways. Because they can be expanded. Once you understand the word some, there's a lot of different ways to use it. Somebody, some of the time. In terms of rhetoric, understanding indefinite pronouns gives you that much more of an arsenal to get your message across. So here are some practice sentences. Most of them have to do with structure class 7, pronouns. You want to look for, are there errors? Is it a subjective objective case? Is it there's no gender neutral pronoun and I need to fix something? I want you to sit here and jot down, make a note on your phone. Again, write it on your arm. Tattoo yourself with grammar. What do you think? Correct or not? And if you don't think it's correct, why? What needs to be fixed? And once you have that done, you can proceed to today's quiz. The link is in eCourses. The answers to those 6 practice sentences are available at the end of the quiz. In the little congratulations, you finished this, you will find all of the answers. So no, I'm not bribing you to take the quiz. I'm just giving you an incentive. Keep track of any questions that you might have, anything that you're going, okay, I've watched this video 4 times and I still don't get it, because that's where I would really like to start class, stuff that still doesn't make sense.